Good afternoon, folks. I know it's been about 7 minutes, and I apologize if there is an echo still. We are waiting to be in contact with Dr. Brown and the folks at one of our facilities where they're filming this. So please just give it a few more minutes. We apologize. We tested it all morning and we didn't have any problems, but we are merging about 4 different systems now.
Hey,
So
are you hearing me now?
Yay! Yes!
All right. So what happened was these systems go on auto mute, and so you kind of have to be a little bit smarter than your technology. Don't you just love it though? Anyway. All right. So Mandy, again, I was just going through the helpful tips. So if you wanted to, we actually went all the way through those already, but maybe not everyone heard them. We'll just ask everyone to use your chat boxes as much as possible, and we do have a time limitation. So with that, we are going to ask you, Mandy, to go ahead and introduce our speakers.
Okay, and I appreciate that, Ron, because I know that we couldn't hear you. We were all on the receiving end, but I'm just glad that we all got connected. And so good afternoon again. And with that, if you've been with us in the past, you know that Ron and I very much care about giving you an idea of who our guest speakers are, who our keynotes are. So because often these leaders come with so much credibility and experience. And when we walk around and see each other on a regular basis, a lot of times we don't get to know in a snapshot who those folks are unless you take the time. So I'm going to have the honor today to introduce 3 of these leaders. Our keynote today is going to be Colonel Col Carroll. She's our new Air Base Wing Commander to the 75th, so welcome, ma'am. She came to us from the Pentagon, from CENTCOM, where she was the Director of Legislative Affairs. And she has a very impressive background, not only giving her experience as an exec officer, but as a flight commander, squadron commander, group commander, and has served all over this world. So she has had assignments from Korea to Virginia to Washington, D.C., Aviano Air Force Base. I'm sure that was a rough one, ma'am. And even Baghdad, Iraq. So a diverse background. And what I thought was really impressive is she has not only a one-time award winner from the Lance Saigon Award, she's won it twice. And she won being a Field Grade Officer of the Year twice. So very, very impressive background. And we look forward to learning more from her today. We also have Chief Master Sergeant Christopher Walker, who hails from Atwater, California. And he joined the Air Force in 1992 and went to the Police Academy. So a lot of his background is definitely in security forces. He served in the United Kingdom, and he's been an investigator and resource advisor. He was also a flight operations superintendent, a flight chief, a security forces manager, and has served at the squadron and the group levels throughout. So we're excited to meet him. He also has had the distinguished and rare opportunity to receive the Lance Saigon winner, as well as the John Levitow Award. So, and we're just grateful. So welcome both Chief and Ma'am. And lastly, our moderator today is going to be Miss Denise Albert. Many of you may know her. She also is a veteran. She has served 20 years, and she now is a civilian. She's our wingman advocate and a diversion and inclusion lead for our installation. She also is certified in the John Maxwell Leadership Coaching and Speaking, and she's a wonderful motivator and just full of energy for those of you who know her. She actually sits on the board of directors at the Inclusion Center in Salt Lake City and is a certified youth mental health first aid trainer. Not only that, she has also won the Air Force Affirmative Employment winner for Federal Women's Program. And last but not least, she was the Complex Roy Wilkins Civil Rights Award winner as well. So we thank all three of you for joining us today. We're just so happy to be with you all, and thank you all for joining us from afar and from close by. So now, Denise, over to you.
Thank you, Mandy. Ma'am, it is such a pleasure to have you with us today, Chief. We know that this is going to be a wonderful time to hear what they have to share with us. Just a brief overview. We're going to cover what diversity and inclusion is, the path to becoming more diverse, and also the path to becoming more inclusive, our expectations, and of course, we have to end with a call to action. With that being said, Colonel Carroll, the floor is yours.
Well, good morning. Mandy, thank you. Denise, thank you. Dr. Brown, also thank you. Thanks for having me here. I am happy to be here today to, again, discuss such a topic that is being highlighted all over the world, especially in our military, that of diversity and inclusion. As we say diversity and inclusion, first I want to point out that they are two separate and distinct things, although they come together and we actually employ and facilitate them together in our actions, they are different. And as the slide indicates, we have an abridged definition, which I believe is visible by all of the audience. It's a workforce that reflects society. So how does society look? That is how we should look as a military. And then inclusion, a mindset that welcomes diversity, that conversation, that dialogue that we're really striving to accomplish. But before I continue, I believe that our Air Force and our Department of Defense already has a defined definition of these two words, and I'll turn it back over to you, Ms.
Thank you, ma'am. By regulation, diversity means a composite of individual characteristics, experiences, and abilities consistent with our Air Force core values and our Air Force mission. That means everything about you counts for diversity. Inclusion is the process of creating a culture where all members of an organization are free to make a contribution, a full contribution to the success of their group, where there are no unnecessary barriers to success.
Thank you for that. So again, as you heard, we have definitions on both of these, diversity and inclusion. And diversity to me is bringing everyone together, again, reflecting society, but also how do you feel about a topic? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? How can we work together? Diversity, coming together, we can accomplish anything. And I'll turn it over to the Chief to get his perspective on diversity before we get off this slide. Chief.
So I think diversity is one of those things that's shaped by our experiences, where we came from, what we've grown up thinking, how the world around us has impacted who we are and how we view things. And so I look back over my career, almost 29 years, and I realized that a lot of folks sitting in the room with me, a lot of my leaders looked exactly like me, not necessarily reflective of the society that we live in, that we serve under. And so I'm glad that this dialogue is happening. I'm glad that we're really focusing and working to ensure that diversity is at the forefront of who we are as a service, who we are as people, because I think that's important to us moving forward.
Wow. Chief, I'd like to take something that you just said. You indicated when you're sitting in the room and you notice that most of the people look like you, but I will tell you, I'm not that person that looks like you.
Right.
And over my career, I will tell you that that has been a thing that I look to when it's all about how do I get to that next level. There is currently, as I sit around, I did not have an African-American female to talk to about those experiences. So what I offer is I bring something different, but I don't just bring it for African-Americans, I bring it for everyone. And the reason I identify that today is we all bring some different experiences based off how we were raised, how we were shaped, and the emotional intelligence that comes with our mindset. And so Chief, as you said that just now, have you ever worked for women or a woman of color in your career?
So I've worked for several women in my career, but I've never worked for a woman of color. And I don't know why that is, but I think, as a service, as we reflect back and as we have these discussions, we're starting to realize there's a barrier. And what that barrier is, I don't know. but we are not growing. I think one of the things, one of our first conversations we had, and you were able to name the total of African American women who have succeeded to serve places within our service, and you know the numbers.
I do know the numbers.
And the fact that we talk by numbers shows that we haven't done what we've needed to do over the years, because it shouldn't be, oh, I know these 2 people or these 3 people. Those conversations shouldn't have to happen. And so we've got a lot of work to do. But I look forward to being part of that change.
And I tell you what, Chief, I am happy that you're on the team. I'm happy to serve alongside of you as we go out and create the change that we need to on all things diversity.
Yes, ma'am.
So as the Chief is indicating, we talked about how many women of color have actually been general officers in our active duty Air Force. And so far today, we've only had 3 to attain that rank. So why have we only had 3? I offer that is because of those opportunities. I don't offer that they're not qualified. It's really the opportunity. And I think it's all about knowing that you can get there and being allowed the opportunity to excel at that rank. So I believe that may be why. I don't know, there's data out there, but let's see what we can do to help shape the change.
Absolutely.
And we'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Many people believe that because of today's current situation that all of a sudden we're talking about diversity and inclusion. But diversity and inclusion has been around a long time. I'm going to let the Colonel expound on that.
Wow. So she keeps turning it over to me, and she's truly the expert. So what Denise means by that is when we talk about diversity and inclusion, many people think because of the recent actions in America, that's why we're here. I will tell you that the Air Force and the Department of Defense, we've defined diversity and inclusion many years ago. Our most recent Air Force instruction is dated 2019, but prior to that, we have one that is dated 2012. So we've been on this road, if you will, journey to talk about it, but now it's really coming to the forefront. And it's coming to the forefront because we are now creating the dialogue where you're comfortable having the conversation. Many people, they know that there should be change, but when you don't know how to impact change, be a change agent, and you don't know if you're going to be heard, you don't speak up. And there's many people I know watching today that are saying, wow, I'm ready to speak up. So I say that because if there is a dialogue that we need to get to embrace the change, to embrace the differences of experience, we need to do that as a nation, as a culture, and more importantly, as an armed forces. So that's what I know about diversity, and I have been on this journey since 2002. I actually wrote a paper when I was a young captain attending George Washington University, and it says, where are we headed? And here we are today, talking about diversity. So I did a paper years ago, and I would be interested to see how much has changed. And I have now pulled that paper out once I was asked to speak here today. So that's what I know about diversity. And Chief, over to you.
So I can tell you, as we've been on this journey recently, it's not a new subject. We've talked about diversity of thought over the years. We've talked about having diverse conversations, but I'm not sure that we've really ever focused. And so what this has caused me to do individually, I'm huge on controlling my battle space and controlling my environment around me. So I've done a lot of reflection. I've done a lot of looking back over the past nearly 29 years and seeing where were the areas that I was blind to? Where were those unconscious biases at? What did I walk by because it didn't impact me? And it probably wasn't intentional. It wasn't with a negative intent, but I walked by it because I didn't see it and I didn't understand it. And so this self-reflection, this journey, and I've had many conversations with Ms. Elbert, it's helping me to grow as an individual, to make me a better father, a better leader, a better leader.
Well, thank you, Chief. On that note about unconscious bias, if I may, the fact that Chief said, when has he just walked by it because it was not really in his battle space? I will tell you, as a woman, I've actually highlighted to many of my own leaders throughout my career where we're looking at selecting someone potentially as replacing me in a job. And we're given a list, a slate of names. And those names include male and females. And more times than not, the leaders would only have men on the list. And I, because I'm a woman, I actually, this one specific instance I recall very, very clearly. I went back to my boss boldly with courage, and I said, sir, I'm curious, why did you not earmark a woman to backfill me? Not a woman of color, but just a woman, because that's important. Although we're talking about diversity, it's not about race, it's also about women, a woman being at the table. So he stepped back. I was a major at the time. He was a colonel. And he said, wow, he said, I didn't see it. And I offered the reason he didn't see it is because he was blind to it. He saw names on the list that he recognized, and those were people, but there were people in his space, and they were all men. What I offered to the group listening is I was able to basically convince him that allow a woman to compete, allow her to interview, and my successor in that specific job actually was a woman. So it's all about, one, being courageous enough to have the conversation. And I will tell you, as a young major and a colonel, it's like, this could have gone sideways. He could have easily said, Janice Carroll, get out of my office. But I will tell you, I am one that I speak up. I speak up, but I do it in such a way that I'm not embarrassing anyone. But I try to get people to see it a different way, because I do believe that those unconscious biases are really why we're at where we're at today. I got it, there's different things out there, but I believe unconscious bias is probably at the core of why we have not risen to the level we need to rise to with all things diverse.
Based on what our guests have said, I want to piggyback on the courageous conversation. If you've been participating in sensing sessions, you have been participating in courageous conversations. Everybody has a story, and under the banner of diversity, your story is what you bring to the table. As the commander is talking about what you bring to the table, the only way we'll know is if you speak up and share. The chief and I have talked about a lot of the experiences, and yes, our blind spots to what is going on in other people's lives will stop us from appreciating the talent that we have coming our way. So how do we become more diverse, ma'am?
Wow. Well, I'll let the chief handle this one first, since I continue to go first. I want to make sure that he has the opportunity, simply because, as he stated, throughout his career, he had to sit back and reflect, and then I will offer my perspective. So, Chief.
So I think when we think about diversity, how do we become more diverse and I don't like to think about it just in the military standpoint. I think about our community and our community on base, our community off base. To be more diverse, the book I'm reading now, Why Did the Black Children Sit Together in the Cafeteria? It talks a lot in that book about how we have a tendency to go to people that look like us. And when we go to people that look like us, that's the pool we pull out of, because that's who we're familiar with. And so in order to be more diverse, we have to give people an opportunity that maybe their records aren't quite as good, or they haven't been put in the same situations, but they need that opportunity to step into those roles and to lead. And so I think back, and we've talked about this before, Ms. Elbert, to my last hire as my executive assistant. I hired Staff Sergeant Nicholas Mulkey. And when you looked at him on paper, and when you looked at comparing him to other airmen and their experiences, maybe he wasn't the most experienced and he was more junior in grade, but he needed an opportunity, and we saw the impact that he's had across this wing. Having diverse thought, Mulkey didn't grow up thinking like me. His upbringing in East Texas was different than mine in Central California. He grew up in a different squadron, different way of thinking. And so just having those teams together, where you get people that think different, that look different, that have different experiences, different religions, all the things that you can think about in diversity, it's important that everybody has an equal seat at the table, equal input, equity, and equality. And when we get to that point, that's when we can quit talking about this, because there's no need to talk about it. But we're not there yet. We have a long way to go.
I agree with you, Chief. When it comes to that opportunity, it's big. And what I will say is sometimes those that want the opportunity are afraid to raise their hand. And they're afraid to raise their hand or step out because they're afraid of rejection. They're afraid that, well, there's no one that has done this, so I don't really want to be the first one. The fear, there's so much fear with people saying, I really want to do that, but I better not. And the fear comes, again, you're diverse, and so you don't know what the unknown is. You don't know how you're going to maneuver the landscape, and more importantly, you're afraid of the word no. And so I will tell you, opportunities are given individuals the opportunity, all individuals, regardless of your background, matters. So once we start that, and you look at it, and so I know there's a lot of work going on, Department of Defense, our headquarters, it's all about where are we now. We understand that there's a baseline definition, everybody's aware, start the dialogue, and start the dialogue with the youngest airmen, the youngest lieutenants. Because for those of us, myself and you, Chief, we've been around. So what do our youngsters think about this? And let's get their input. Let's start that dialogue from the bottom up and reshape this environment that we're in. That's how I look at diversity. Back to you, Neil.
It's so remarkable that you did say the youngest, because when General Bunch was here, I sat in his sensing session. And there was a young airman, Caucasian female. She was the last person to speak. She listened to everybody in the room. She heard everything they had to say. And with her 2 stripes, she said, I'm ready to make change. And I was like, oh, she leads the charge. And so we have young airmen here that if they're not stifled, they will take us to where we need to go. And I say that because I know the seasoned folks believe they've been through everything and we should hear what they have to say. Sometimes I'm that we should hear what I have to say person, but I have taken a position of learning, which goes along with your leadership style, to understand where we can go and what other people bring to the table. There's an appreciation for people who don't look like me and don't have the experiences that I have, because they might be the puzzle piece to our success.
Absolutely. Wow. So, Chief, do you want to go off that? Go ahead.
I do. I want to expound on that. And so, obviously, policy comes from up above. You know, it comes from a strategic level. But if we're truly going to change, it has to start with our young airmen. It has to start at the tactical level where we're giving those young wage grade employees and those young GS employees and those young airmen and officers the opportunity to really drive where we're going. Because they're the ones that are dealing with that. And in the future, they're the ones that are going to benefit from that. And so we need to make sure that we're setting them up in the right situations to be successful.
Oh, absolutely. I like to pull on the puzzle piece. You talk about a puzzle. What I offer is it's merely a tapestry of where we're at as a nation. When we look at our flag, it's red, white, and blue. We're Americans. And all Americans should, again, that equality piece you talked about, given that opportunity, asking someone what do they think and hold back. That goes back to, as you said, my leadership style, taking command. I said the 3 L's. The first thing I want to do is listen. I don't know your mission here. I'm brand new to Air Force Materiel Command, but you know what? I'm listening and I'm ready to move out, learn, and lead. This is your Air Force. I'm a part of your team. Thank you for having me on your team. And I owe that to leadership. So it's all about listening to the lowest level to the highest level. Let's come together. Let's have those sessions. And oh, by the way, remove the rank from the discussion. And that way you allow those young airmen to truly have that conversation. Because I will tell you, as you so stated, sometimes we are caught in our we meaning this older crowd, we're in our own mindset. Move that mindset out the way and let's move out. Those biases need to go away. And we do have unconscious and conscious bias. Yes. So let's not think that it's all unconscious. Let's just realize that We have both of those, but if we move those out the way, we peel those back and we get down to the discussion level of, you know what, my experience and your experience are different. And you know what that does? That shapes our overall emotional intelligence. Our cognitive behavior drives what we do, what we see. If we break that down, start that dialogue, we will then look at how do we assess, educate, train, motivate, move on, and start this journey. And as you said, maybe we're not talking about it as much, but it has to be in our overall DNA. It's part of our core values already. It's part of our Constitution. We now need to embrace it together, make it part of our DNA today, and move out. Back to you, ma'am.
So the time has swiftly gone by. We know that we could talk about this probably for the rest of the week, if not even till the year is over. So here are our expectations and our call to action. You guys see it on the slide. We already talked about practicing our Air Force core values. They are our foundation. They are what we all have in common. Look for diversity and inclusion opportunities to grow each day. Talk to somebody who doesn't look like you. Talk to somebody that you know doesn't come from where you come from. Cultivate a culture of kindness and respect. There is nothing wrong with being kind to everyone and anyone. So if you see it, hear it, experience it, call it in. And when we say call it in, that means you're going to point out that something is going on that shouldn't be going on, and you're going to do it with empathy, because empathy will bring unity. And remember, we are all Big A Airmen. Ron, Mandy, do we have anything in the comments? Questions?
Well, we actually do. We actually do have a couple. I'm going to bring here a minute. Hey, Mandy, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Hear you clearly, yes. Do you have a couple of questions, at least?
I sure do.
Actually, we probably had, I don't know what time it is, so I will say we have time. Let's do two, one for me, one for the chief. More importantly, before we get to the question, I don't know that Denise highlighted today's session, although we said D&I, we really focused on diversity.
Yes.
So there will be another opportunity that we come back and talk about inclusivity, because the two are different. They have different definitions. And so I want to make sure that today we talked about D&I, but really we focused on diversity. So Mandy, back to you for that question.
All right, Mandy, what do we have?
You bet. Well, one of the questions, so they just wanted to know the name of the book that the chief was referring to.
It's the book is called "Why Do All the Black Children Sit Together in the Cafeteria?"
Wow, very interesting. Very intriguing.
It is a powerful book, and I tell you, this self-reflection journey I've been on over the last, I've been on it 29 plus years, because who I left Atwater, California as is not the same person I am now. But really, as I've reflected over probably this past 6 months, these books sometimes, they hurt. And when you realize the experiences of what we have going on in our service, our nation, it's painful, because I've been part of the problem, whether intentionally or not. I've been part of the problem because of how our country is set up. And so it's a great book that will open your eyes to many things that are going on in the world.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Chief.
Yeah, one of my favorite is Black Like Me, written by John Howard Griffin. Oh my gosh, a really true story. You have got to get that one. That's a must reading. Okay, John Howard Griffin, Black Like Me. Another question.
All right. One of the guys asked, there's diversity and inclusion for the military, but what is the D&I for civilians? What is the management process for that? Is there anything you can speak to on that?
Diversity and inclusion does not distinguish between civilian and military. Certain commands like ours, Air Force Material Command, is 75 to 80% civilian. There is no way that we could just focus on military and not our civilian workforce. From an Air Force level, there is a support for the warfighter and more of a concentration on our military members. So the regulations and the processes that we're about to go through are for all airmen, as I said, Big A airmen, military and civilian.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Any other thoughts or comments, Mandy, that you had?
I don't have any other thoughts or comments on that, but I do have a couple more questions from the chat box. How do we include diversity without choosing based on all the things we aren't supposed to judge by?
Wow. So what I will say, the word that you just used is key judge. If we remove that judging word and just sit back and, as Chief indicated, let's reflect. Let's reflect and say, you know what, let me remove those things. Let me truly think about, not about how someone looks, how they act, but what is the factual data that brings us together? So the judge word, all people do have a tendency to judge. Let's not judge. Let's come together and be a family that represents that flag, red, white, and blue, the true tapestry of our nation, and let's embrace this change together. That's what I would offer. Back to you, ma'am, if you want to offer anything else.
That is fantastic, ma'am.
All right. Well, I think we're almost out of time, Mandy. And wow, this has been pretty awesome. What? I told you it would be good.
Well,
And this is just awesome stuff. And just to think, this is just the introduction, because we get to have Col Carroll and the chief back to hit on the actual inclusion piece on this, and that is pretty awesome. I'm especially eager for that one, because I know that really has to do with a lot of how we think and how we really include others. And if you've ever been in a place where you've felt rejected, or you've not felt like you're really, really, truly a part of, then I think we're going to glean so much from that particular session. But yes, ma'am.
So one more thing I will say, if there's anyone out there that's watching and there was a question you didn't want to put in the chat box, and Katie would like it to come to me or the chief, you can actually email us directly. And I say that because you may not be ready to make that courageous step to enter it in the chat box or to ask it. You have that opportunity. I'd like to put that out there. Never be afraid to ask. And I open it up to you can actually come to Chief Walker and myself and ask those questions. We are wingmen together. We're a team, and it's all about this journey together. I thank all those that are watching and looking forward to our next session.
Awesome. Very good. Speaking of the next session, great transition, ma'am, because tomorrow is our next session. Tomorrow at 1300 hours, which is our regular scheduled time for these webinars. So 1300 hours. And we have none other than Dr. Hamrick that's going to be here, and she's going to be sharing something that we really, really have been talking a lot about, and that is people and words. Of course, we understand people and we understand how complex people are. But what we also found is words are powerful when we think in terms of culture, togetherness, diversity, and inclusion. Words are so powerful. So please, 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 please tune in tomorrow. We see that almost 100 people, well over 100 people were on this particular webinar. We encourage you to invite others, have them sign up, get online, and let's make this experience a growing and an expanding and an alive experience as we move our culture to a very diverse and inclusive world. So having said that, tomorrow, as I said, 1300 hours, we're going to have Dr. Hamrick here. And Mandy, why don't you share what we're going to be having in the rest of the series?
You bet. And I just wanted to send a shout out to one of our team council presidents that was on the chat box today. She kind of echoed what the Colonel was saying, and she views diversity as being invited to the party, whereas inclusion may be considered being invited to dance. So I liked that analogy.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Analogy as well, Mandy.
Yes. So we also have, after Doc Hamrick tomorrow, we hope that you will join us for that. We also have Colonel Boring, the new aircraft commander, will be joining us for a diversity and inclusion discussion on the 3rd of September. Also on the 17th, we will have General von Hoffman speaking with us on One Airman, One Goal. And then lastly, on the 24th, for now, we'll kick off the More You Know series, or the title is still out to be debated, but it will be a good news sharing on connecting people to the mission across what is happening across Team Hill, the good news stories that we need more of. So please stay tuned for those and continue to send us your suggestions. We really appreciate you all being with us today. Over to you, Ron.
All right. Well, Mandy, as always, it is just such a joy to host these with you. And as we say in the world of professional development, it is all about opportunities. That is our charter. Our charter is to provide more opportunities for all airmen in the way of equality and equity. And that is quite the true north that helps our compass towards success. So before I close things out, I'd just like to turn it over to our panel one more time for any closing thoughts, and then we will sign off for today. Any thoughts?
I would say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this. Thank you for inviting me, ma'am. This is a journey. We're just stepping off. We've got a long way to go, and it's going to take all of us to be a part of that journey. So I look forward to taking it with you. Let's keep moving forward.
Again, Chief, excited to be working with you side by side as your woman. And to capitalize on what's next is people and words matter. The people, we're those airmen, the words. Those words that we just talked about, diversity and inclusion, they may mean something different to you and I. We have to start with our baseline definition. How do we move forward with those definitions working together? So thank you again for having me. And I'm sure that we will get the inclusion series on the calendar. It's not on there now because we purposely wanted to separate diversity and inclusion. So again, thank you for having me and looking forward to Words Matter.
Absolutely. Ms. Denise, any other closing thoughts?
As your installation D&I lead, I will be giving you the information that comes down from Air Force and Air Force Material Command. It is a joy to be able to support this leadership and have them support me as we move forward to a better goal.
All right, and as we say in Jamaica, no problem, everything airy. So if you want to get a hold of Ms. Denise with some questions, and also for our esteemed panel, please send us an email too. You can send it directly to us or directly to the Air Base Wing, and we will certainly make sure that we get some answers for you. But until next time, we want to say thank you once again for joining us. Have an absolutely great Air Force Day. God bless.